This with the simple goal: give Texans a way to take pride in their roads. Join the thousands of volunteers who have made a difference for decades. Adopt a highway. Get together, get active, get noticed.
The Western legacy has been a passion of the Brumball family for over 50 years. Our product represents who we are and what we stand for. A legacy tradition since 1966. From living room to dining room, all table accessories, we strive to bring you the best in home decor. Brumballs, where we make your house a home.
I have some glad tidings to impart.
Whoa! Look at that!
I'm still surprised at how good I am.
Jane Austen was my sister.
I didn't think I would ever study medicine, but here I am.
Absolutely delicious, especially straight out of the oven.
I've never seen anything like this.
I think we have sufficient cause for celebration.
It's almost here. Wynonna Judd is headlining this year's Main Street Live. Friday, May 23rd, the biggest street party of the year takes over Main Street in downtown Midland, right in front of Basin PBS. Tickets and sponsorships are on sale now. Enjoy an epic night of live music, VIP experiences, an exciting auction, amazing food, drinks, and more. Get your tickets now at basinpbs.org or by calling 432-563-5728. Supported by S. Javed Anwar and Midland Energy, with additional support by these sponsors. Tune in to Basin PBS Thursday, May 15th at 7:30 p.m. for an evening with Shane Smith and the Saints. Enjoy a performance of the band whose sound evolved on stage and grew into what you hear today. Pushing limits and broadening their reach, Shane Smith has a sound all their own, made possible with support from the Arts Council of Midland. The Main Street Live auction is back, and every bid brings the fun and supports Basin PBS. From unique items to unforgettable experiences, your winning bid helps Basin PBS keep telling West Texas stories, supporting education, and bringing our community together. So start picking out what you want to take home and know that every dollar helps keep public media strong in our region. Main Street Live. Bid big, give back, and take home something amazing. Basin PBS is more education, more community. Your voice matters. You're watching a Basin PBS live town hall. More than a channel, what we stand to lose. Questions? Ask them on the Basin PBS Facebook page and YouTube channel.
I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps for the last 2 days.
Well, I'm grateful not only for your goosebumps, but for your interest in our kind of communication. Could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important?
Yes.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that the children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children, doing puppets in very personal communication with small groups. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
What you saw in the opening just now was Mr. Rogers testifying before the U.S. Senate in 1969, when then President Richard Nixon proposed severe cuts to funding for PBS, the public broadcasting system. The Senate did not cut funding that year. On May 2nd of this year, just a few weeks ago, President Trump issued an executive order to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to cease federal funding for PBS. It's not clear if the president has the authority to do so, since the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was directly authorized by Congress and is not a federal executive agency. Public broadcasting officials from across the country descended on Capitol Hill today in hopes of convincing lawmakers to preserve their federal funding despite pressure from President Trump. Money from the federal government accounts for fully half the annual budgets of some local public television stations, including ours, Basin PBS. I'm Becky Ferguson, coming to you live from the Anwar family studio at Basin PBS. In the next half hour, you'll hear from a panel of folks who believe funding for PBS should be preserved. At any time tonight, please visit protectmypublicmedia.org to sign the petition. Also, we would love to have your questions tonight. You can submit them on our Facebook page, and we'll do our best to ask them. Our panel tonight: Guy McCrary, who is President and CEO of the Permian Basin Area Foundation. Andra Jones, Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Permian Basin. Pat Canty, President of Basin PBS Board. And Laura Wolf, CEO of Basin PBS. Okay, we're going to start with talking about PBS funding at the macro level, and then we're going to get into some details about our local PBS station. But Laura, I want to start with you. So let's do a little bit of history and talk to us about why PBS was created in the first place.
So PBS was first the National Education Television Association, and way back in the 60s, I don't know who got together, but it turned into the public broadcasting system, and that's when the federal funding began, because they wanted, Congress, the government wanted a station that was educational, that wasn't relied on local commercials, that kids could learn from, that adults could learn from. In fact, the first show on PBS was Julia Child's The French Hen, along with Sesame Street was early on. Of course, Mr. Rogers was early on. So it was created strictly for education.
In 1967 by Congress and then signed by the president.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I'm going to stick with you for just a second. I want you to lay out for us what is happening related to the threat of PBS losing funding at the national level.
Well, it's scary. It's extremely scary. As you said, President Trump signed an executive order about 2 weeks ago defunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is where all PBS stations get their money from. Not only did he do that, but he put in there a recension of any money that's already been appropriated. And Congress has already appropriated money for PBS through 2027. So Trump's executive order claws that back. So basically, we have no money after like September 1st of this year. However, because PBS and CPB was not founded by the president but by Congress, we believe what he has done as an executive order is illegal. And as far as I know, as of to date, there's talks about a bill going to Congress, but it hasn't been presented as of yet. So we're in a dire strait right now.
Okay. Pat, I'm going to move on to you. One of the reasons for proposing the defunding of PBS is that by covering issues like race in America and gender issues, that public media is broadly engaging in what opponents call cultural indoctrination. You have mentioned that Congress and the President should not throw out the baby with the bathwater. What do you mean by that?
Well, mostly what I mean is that most of what we do in PBS is educational programming. And there's the accusation that there's political bias in news coverage. Well, we really don't do news coverage. We do very little of it. We're all about educational programming. And my point is why would you want to defund an operation like PBS that does so much for the community it serves? And when there are things that you can do, if indeed there are instances of bias or inappropriate programming, as they might allege, there's ways that you can fix that. You know, there are rules or regulations. We already, on PBS, we deal with all sorts of regulations, down to, you can't have a certain logo on the set. You can't, all sorts of regulations.
You can't run advertising.
Can't run advertising.
Call to action.
Yeah, you'll see our sponsorships between shows. We have to follow very specific guidelines of how we present those so they're not considered advertising. So my point is there are rules that they could institute working with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting or PBS that could alleviate these concerns. There's no need to, like I said, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just totally eliminate funding for PBS and see it go away. That would be a travesty.
Andra, a great deal of PBS programming is for children, and you have mentioned the generational connection in children's programming that spans decades. Can you talk about that?
So I remember watching PBS shows at my house and at my babysitter's house, so much like you're talking about Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, and now I have children. I'm also an educator for 16 years and now running the Boys and Girls Club. My whole life has been about kids. It's been about educating kids. And the great thing about PBS is that you have those built-in filters that it's appropriate, it's focused on education. And out here in West Texas, I think we all have heard about our gaps in literacy, and these early childhood programs could be the very first teacher for kids. When a kid is not being taken to preschool or a formal schoolhouse or whatever that looks like. And that's critical for getting some of those building blocks in place before our kids go into a kindergarten or pre-kindergarten classroom. And the other part I think that is just so important is that through the decades is I turn on PBS Kids in the morning for my daughter, but there's also a partner station that could be for adults too. So those are there. I'll give a good plug too for parents. There is an app. We live on this app when we do screen time at restaurants sometimes. I'm one of those parents. Sometimes I just need to talk to my husband or on road trips. And the PBS Kids app has all of the shows, and it works without internet. And I don't have to worry about what ad is going to come across there or what other, commercials or whatever. It's you guys are doing the work for us as parents, and it's already hard enough to kind of filter out what we do and don't want our kids exposed to. And you guys, thank you for that.
So I will tell you, we're able to pull a lot of data these days. Technology has changed. And we do over 500,000 streams per month on the PBS Kids app in West Texas. That's more than Dallas, Houston, and you're one of those 500,000.
Yes. And whenever I was a campus principal, PBS was one of those things that I would see in my early childhood classrooms that was kind of one of those brain break pieces. It wasn't that we set kids in front of a screen to teach them. There's many other ways to teach children. But if we're going to have them in front of a screen, why don't we lean into something that is tried, true education and research-based?
Laura, what constitutes the bulk of our programming here at Basin PBS?
Well, I think over 8 hours a day is kids, PBS Kids in the morning. But we also have a second channel that is 24/7 kids. So it's kids programming 24/7 hours a day. But a full 8 hours every day on the main channel is PBS Kids.
And not only that, we're not just about television programming. Tell her some of the programs that we do throughout the Permian Basin.
You know what? I'm going to come back to that. But thank you for reminding me. I want to go to Guy real quick. We've talked a little bit about children's programming. We carry, of course, a lot of nationally produced programs here at Basin PBS. If they disappeared, would that leave a hole in West Texas?
Absolutely, no question about it. With respect to not only kids, but adults, you know, top of my mind, and when I think of Basin PBS, is the News Hour. And, you know, my story goes back to when PBS was one of 4 channels on the television set. And so I consumed Mr. Rogers and all of those. But today, I think programming in the news space is very, very vital. It's very comprehensive. The News Hour is one of our staples at our house.
Andrew, I'm going to come back to you. You sort of alluded to it a few moments ago, but in a time when it is increasingly difficult to protect our children from inappropriate material, tell me why you think PBS is the best place to be.
I think one of the assets is it's just a variety of programming. So you have for your littles, and then you can get into the nature shows, or you know, even some of the historical documentaries. I mean, there's so many pieces there that span the generations. You mentioned the 4 stations, and it brought back the memory of when my parents moved us out in the country in Snyder, America, right up the road. We did not have cable, and so it was the antenna. My dad took us from the city life, and we lost cable, and PBS was one of those ones that I could take those rabbit ears, and I could watch TV in my room. So it's, again, it goes back to that generational learning and accessibility. For Basin PBS, yes, we're sitting in Midland, but y'all's station is going beyond Midland County, beyond Ector County, into places that they wouldn't have access to this and what we have here otherwise if it wasn't for that as far as public broadcasting.
Laura, this might be a good time for you to talk about our geographic area. What
yeah,
all we cover.
So we are free. That's why they're public media. We're free over the air. You don't have to have cable to watch us.
Or a monthly subscription.
Or a monthly subscription. In fact, we did 110,000 weather emergency alerts last year alone. And that's critical for our whole viewing area, which goes all the way down to the Big Bend. I mean, it's a vast rural area. In fact, we don't have a lot of time, but out of all the stations, out of all the PBS stations in the country, we're in the top 4 for being hurt the most with defunding, which was a terrible thing to read in a national paper.
And what's really, when you say that to me as a West Texan, people don't realize how remote part of like where we really are. And
exactly.
But it's a flourishing area, and you can travel anywhere, and you're going to run into somebody that has a connection, you know, to West Texas with our industries. But that defunding for those places that are very remote and rural, that's critical.
We're a lifeline
really,
for those people.
Absolutely.
And there's tons of farms and ranches that don't have the internet, that don't have access to cable. So we're a lifeline in that they can get their news, they can get their national news, but they can also get entertainment. We have a good supporter, Randy Ham, who runs the Odessa Arts Council, and he tells a great story about he grew up in Fort Stockton, and all he watched was PBS, but he watched PBS theater and music, and that's how he fell in love.
An artist.
He fell in love, and now, you know, he's serving that mission. So I love that. Sharpie, our chief engineer, and I hope he doesn't kill me after the show, but his mom is deaf, and he grew up watching Sesame Street, and he didn't have a mom that could talk to him with vowels and consonants, and he learned all that through Sesame Street. Those are the kind of people that we reach every day.
I'm going to stay with you for just a second, Laura. The PBS CEO, Paula Kerger, says that 15% of PBS is funded by the federal government. That amounts to about $1.60 per person per year. But if Congress eliminates funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, what would that mean? This is going to be a multi-part question. What would that mean for Basin PBS? How much of our budget is funded locally? And how do we raise money and spend it? So 3 parts.
Ooh,
sorry. Okay, so start with.
It would decimate us.
Okay, that's what it would mean for us. Okay.
Yeah, it would decimate us. You know, we're in a debt-free building thanks to wonderful sponsors who gave us $4.2 million in gifts, that we are in a debt-free building. In the last 8 years, we've built a state-of-the-art production studio. We had no education department. I now have 3 people in that department. We were just about to roll out a mobile Jolly Trolley where we could go to rural America and serve families. It would decimate that because we've grown from 4 people 8 years ago to 11. So that's a huge, that's a scary thing to think about. And as far as funding, as I told you, we're one of the top 4 stations in the country in the most serious jeopardy. And that's because 48% of our annual revenue is federal funds. It amounts to almost $1 million a year. I will say that over half of that goes towards programming costs from PBS. We pay PBS
we buy those programs.
For Ken Burns and Nova and, you know, kids programming. We pay PBS those programming dues. The rest of that money goes towards salaries that are pertinent to keeping us on the air. So it's not like we have this $1 million and we can just go out and spend it. It's very guided in how we spend it. So I will say that the community at large has been very gracious. This is where I'm not going to cry.
But you raise about $1 million.
We raise about $1 million.
Locally.
We have the CPB, in order to
Corporation for
Public Broadcasting, which handles all the money, all the federal money, and dishes it out to PBS stations. That's a really good word, dishes it out. Anyway, what you have to do is you have to reach $800,000 per year in net revenue. You have to raise it yourself in net revenue, not capital, just operations. And if you do that, then you get approved for federal funding every year. And we've been very fortunate that we've reached that goal.
Well, we have a very generous community. And part of that generosity comes from the Permian Basin Area Foundation.
And
y'all have been a stalwart supporter of Basin PBS, and I want you to elaborate on why it is important to you and important to the members of your board.
Sir, we're proud to be a supporter, and we so appreciate Laura and her team here and the good work they do. I think it's meaningful on all these fronts, and replacing that $1 million is going to be an uphill battle. I think Laura and I have talked about this, but you know, philanthropy is a pretty broad term. It's one of the characterizations of Middle and Odessa, this community, but that's not to assume that the federal funding would be replaced by philanthropy locally is awfully presumptuous, and I don't think it would be sustainable. Certainly from our standpoint, we're always delighted to sponsor the good work of PBS here. But, and I can only speak for our foundation, but there are many foundations, many community leaders, many generous folks around this region that would be supportive, but not to replace the kind of number that Laura is speaking to in terms of, you know, that gap, if you will.
Well, what value does Basin PBS bring to the community so that you all think it's important to support?
Sure. I think much of the local programming is very important. We talked a little bit earlier about the sort of the space that Basin PBS filled during the COVID experience, not the least of which was just basically students who were able to tap into education programs during the school year. And then there's the local aspect of local bond issues, local elections, candidate debates, all of those things that were it not for Basin PBS, we would not have the benefit of that information. And it's very important information, especially if you're a voter and really want to go and vote in a thoughtful and judicious way. So those kind of local things just don't happen anywhere else except Basin PBS. And so we're happy to plug in and sponsor where we can.
And I want to add on to that, because when we have those panels that are widespread, y'all work so well to get a variety of people that are talking, especially in these election type settings, to where there is that unbiased. But then it's also that you, like tonight, having people where they can tune in on social media, whereas so many people that's where they're getting their communication and their news, and then they can post a question that may be answered during a panel, but then, like y'all encouraged us tonight, for us to go on there later, look and see what questions we could answer. And that's what happens during those debates or forums or town halls. And I haven't seen that anywhere else. And as a person who is busy with all of the things in life, that's one thing that I do tune into with you guys. And many people that in my circle of friends and colleagues do that as well. And I think that you're bridging a lot of generational gaps by linking those things together.
And I'm going to stick with you for just another second. I think you alluded to it a few minutes ago, that of course our service is free, but that it is easy to access on lots of different platforms. So talk a little bit more about that.
So of course the app that can go on, it's on my phone, it's on my iPad for the family side, and then you guys are linked into the social media aspect, of course, which is really important to link to many different people in many different places. And then on TV, I mean, like I said, it is what goes on the TV in the morning for our child whenever she's eating our breakfast. But again, that's, yes, through the streaming station that we have, but I also could have access to that if we weren't streaming. So I wouldn't have to pay anything.
Yeah, we're on Hulu now and Amazon. I mean, we're virtually everywhere.
And so many great programs.
Pat, I'm going to go to you now. This is not the first time the existence of Basin PBS has been imperiled. Some years ago, it looked like we would lose public broadcasting in West Texas. I want you to tell us a little bit about that time period and what happened to save Basin PBS.
So it started, Basin PBS essentially started in about 1986. And I think initially the license was held by Odessa College. And then it got to the point where Odessa College said, we don't want to be in this business anymore. And so the license went to Ector County Independent School District. And the same thing happened there. It was leading up to 2005, and ECISD said, we're not in the public television business. And so a group of Odessans and Midlanders, Jane Wolfe, John James, Frank Dedrick, we all got together and we formed this nonprofit group that remind me of the name.
The Permian Basin Public Telecommunications Incorporated.
That's it. And so we formed this group, and we got the license, and we kept it going. But we really never had a home there. We would meet in the Confederate Air Force conference room. We had a couple of offices there. We would have programs sometimes. If we did locum programs, we'd have things over at the Yucca Theater. I think we were on the tower at OC at one point. Then we were kicked off that tower, and then we had to go to the tower at ICA over at the mall.
Right.
And then now we're out
on the Patricia Highway.
Patricia Highway. So we've had a very precarious history, and the really interesting thing is how far this station has come. And now you see this full-blown, this amazing station with this incredible studio and staff. And we're able to do so much local programming and so many programs in the community. And for something that I think we're still the smallest station in the country.
We are.
So for the smallest station in the country that basically shouldn't even be here. In fact, it wasn't that long ago where the Corporation for Public Broadcasting wanted us to kind of shut down and fold into another one of the cities. Because they said, y'all are just too small, and we just don't think you'll ever.
The little engine that could.
Exactly, and we proved them wrong. She proved them wrong.
Well, a moment ago, Pat, you were asking Laura about programs that Basin PBS does that are not on television, and I cut you off. But now, talk a little bit about what we do that people maybe don't see on TV.
It's a lot. It's over 30 a year. So, you know, everything from last week, we did Teacher Appreciation Week, where we went to 7 schools with Clifford and gave away a ton of goodies for teachers. We do that every year. We do some things with Boys and Girls Club. Our education department is out there constantly. They'll be at the museum, but Celebration of the Arts this weekend. We started a heritage festival 3 years ago to celebrate the different cultures in West Texas and in Midland. In May 23rd, which you need to buy a ticket, please, is Winona is coming to Main Street Live. That's the only fundraiser we do all year, by the way. Everything we do is free. The Heritage Festival is free. We do a back-to-school festival in August with 1,500 to 2,000 kids. That's free. We serve our community. We do activities here, 2 tea parties, and Carl the Collector, we did an afternoon for autism here.
I'm going to interrupt you because we're about to run out of time. I want you to tell people what they can do to help if they would like to.
Okay, so you really, please, please, please go to protectmypublicmedia.org, sign the petition, and call or email your congressman. We've been doing it here, and it's real important that you do it to help us keep the federal funding. It's so important, and you're going to get fatigue from doing it. But don't give up hope. I wrote a quote down. I have to read it because she's going to make me get off.
You're right.
And that is, hard is different than hopeless. And that's what I cry. It's not hopeless, but what we're doing is hard.
All right.
So please.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, panelists. That's going to have to be the last word. I want to thank our panelists, Pat Canty, Guy McCrary, Andra Jones, and Laura Wolf. Thank you, all our viewers and our members, for joining us tonight. If you're not a member, we hope that you will become one and visit basinpbs.org for more information, or go to protectmypublicmedia.org to sign the petition. I'm Becky Ferguson on behalf of Basin PBS. Thank you and good night.